Hello friends, this is the second lecture of our male reproductive system. We are reached to the stage we are going to discuss about what is the role of a seminal vesicle. So seminal vesicle there are two set of a seminal vesicle over the side of a ejaculatory duct. So seminal vesicle will secrete basically the mucoid material. First is the citric acid, then the prostaglandin, then seminogelin, fructose, fibrinogen. These are the contents that is released by the seminal vesicle. In different book they give a different material that is released by the seminal vesicle, but these remain constant. They add one or two more material or they delete one or two material, but this five material is basically remain constant: citric acid, prostaglandin, seminogelin, fructose and fibrinogen. Now you might be thinking, what is seminogelin? Seminogelin is basically it induces the coagulation of a semen immediately after ejaculation. What does seminogelin do? Seminogelin what do? Once the semen is ejaculated, it is basically in the liquid state. After some time it become coagulated, become a coagulum, right? So this formation of fluid structure into this coagulum, that is done by seminogelin. And the fructose, as you know, the fructose is basically responsible for a nutrition aspect. So fructose is basically give nutrition to the semen, right? Now what is the prostaglandin do? What is the role of the prostaglandin? Now prostaglandin will aid fertilization in two ways. Prostaglandin has that function to aid fertilization. It promote the formation of the pregnancy. How? First, it will react with the female cervical mucus and make it receptive for the sperm movement. So cervical mucus, if it is very thick, it will make the cervical mucus in such a way that it become more receptive for the sperm movement. So sperm can easily remove the structure, remove the fluid that is present inside the cervix and easily get access to the uterus. Second thing it will do is causes reverse peristaltic contraction. It causes reverse peristaltic contraction in the uterus and uterine tube. So by this reverse peristaltic contraction, it move the ejaculated sperm toward the ovaries. Alright, this is the function of the prostaglandin. Now what is the role of a prostate gland? See, this is over there is a prostate gland. Now again prostate gland will release certain chemicals. First is the calcium, then it release this citrate ion, then clotting enzyme, phosphate and bicarbonate, and the prostate specific antigen. These are the structure that is released from the prostate gland. Now this phosphate and bicarbonate are basically the buffer system that is present inside the semen. You see, once inside the epididymis, whatever the semen will be present is basically the sperm basically will be exposed to the acidic environment, right? By secreting this bicarbonate and phosphate is basically formation of the buffer. So it basically decrease the acidity, it increase the pH of a semen, right? So prostate gland will secrete thin and milky fluid, and it is basically the slightly alkaline, and that alkalinity will be neutralize the acidity of a seminal fluid during ejaculation and increase, or it will be increase the motility of a sperm. So you guys you know that sperm do not become optimally motile until the pH will be the surrounding fluid will be approached to 6 to 6.5. Alright, now what is the role of this prostate specific antigen, PSA? There is a prostate specific antigen. It is also is a profibrinolysin. It is the prostate specific antigen is basically a protease enzyme. It is basically liquefy a coagulated semen after a few minutes. Alright, so first seminogelin do coagulation of the semen, then this PSA, a prostate specific antigen or serine protease, it is basically the fibrinolysin. It will lyse the coagulation and liquefies the coagulated semen after a few minutes. So basically increased PSA will be seen in very specific condition known as the prostatic infection, benign prostatic hypertrophy, or even prostatic carcinoma. Is basically the marker for a prostate pathology. This prostate specific antigen, the amount of the PSA will increase in prostate pathology. It may be infection, it may be hypertrophy, it may be carcinoma. Alright, now let's discuss about the characteristic of a semen. Now what is semen? Semen is basically ejaculated during the male sexual act. It is a fluid in nature, and it also contains two things. One is the fluid that is secreted by the epididymis, by the vas deferens, by the seminal-vesicle, by the prostate gland, and second thing is the sperm. So it is a mixture of fluid and sperm. So composition of the semen, as far as the composition of a semen is concerned, the composition of the fluid is concerned, vas deferens will give 10% of the fluid, seminal vesicle will give the 60% of that fluid, and prostate will give 30% of the fluid. So you can see that the bulk of a semen is basically the seminal vesicle fluid. Right? And mucoid consistency of a semen will be done by the seminal vesicle. Milky appearance of a semen will be done by the prostatic fluid. Got it? Now semen will be coagulated soon after the ejaculation due to the clotting factor that is present inside the seminal vesicle, that is seminogalin. Now seminogalin is the major protein. It holds what is the role to coagulate the semen, right? Now once the semen will be ejaculated, first it is fluid form, and after that, because of the seminogalin, is become coagulated. So making the semen coagulated, the seminogalin hold the semen in a deeper region of the vagina. Got it? And after that, coagulum then dissolve in next 50 to 30 minutes by the prostatic secretion, basically PSA. That PSA has a three another name. One is the seminin, another one is the prostate specific antigen, and the third one is plasminogen activator. I think this is the plasminogen. So the name is seminin, plasminogen activator, and PSA. So different book use the different terminology. All the three things are the same. So either it is known as seminin, either it is known as plasminogen activator, will activate the plasmin and eventually do the lytic function, and the last one is the prostate specific antigen. And now as far as the speed of a sperm is concerned, is basically 1 to 4 millimeter per minute in female genital tract, and it reaches to the uterine tube where the fertilization should take place in about 1 hour for 60 minutes, 30 to 60 minutes. So you can remember in such a way that speed of a sperm is 1 to 4 mm, reach to uterine tube in 1 hour, and the life of a sperm is basically 1 to 2 days. It's easy. Now lifespan of a semen in male genital duct, it will be live for many weeks. Once it is ejaculated, the lifespan of a semen is about 24 to 48 hours. Basically it is the lifespan of a sperm. Okay, now at the lower temperature we can store a semen for several weeks at lower temperature. If you frozen the semen, if you at the frozen temperature below 100 degree minus 100 degrees Celsius, sperm will be preserved for years. This is all about the lifespan of a semen. The lifespan that you need to remember is inside the female genital tract, that is 24 to 48 hours, that is 1 to 2 days. Now we discuss the decapacitation of a sperm. Let's discuss about the reverse, that is capacitation of the sperm. It's basically just reverse the decapacitation. We give the motility to the sperm, right? What is capacitation of the sperm? Capacitation is when the semen coming in contact with the fluid of a female genital tract. Once the semen is ejaculated inside the vagina, and once the semen will come in contact with the female genital tract, basically the cervix and the uterus, there are multiple changes will take place. That multiple changes will eventually activate the sperm, and that multiple changes is known as capacitation of a spermatozoa. So basically, if you sperm are said to be mature when they leave the epididymis, right? They first become motile, then become non-motile. But when they leave, the activity is actually held in check by the multiple factors. One are the acidity of a semen that is secreted by the epididymis, basically the lactate, and multiple inhibitory factor is basically keep check the actual activity or actual potential of a sperm to swim, right? So what actually happen in the capacitation? Now, as far as the uterus and uterine fluid is concerned, they wash away the various inhibitory factor that is attached to the sperm. First thing is the cholesterol vesicle. Sperm swim away from the cholesterol vesicle. This cholesterol vesicle is continuously added to cover the acrosome, the acrosomal vesicle that is situated over the top of the sperm, right? To the main motto of to add the cholesterol vesicle, the CHO stands for cholesterol, is to make sure that the acrosomal reaction will not happen inside the male genital tract, right? But once the semen is ejaculated, sperm is not inside the male genital tract anymore, so we need to get rid of this cholesterol or inhibitory substance. So sperm will swim away from this cholesterol vesicle that is added to by the membrane that is cover the acrosome. Second thing is that sperm become more permeable to the calcium. So once the sperm become more permeable to the calcium, it will be activate the calcium channel, that is Caspar. As the calcium will enter inside the sperm, where the calcium influx basically causes increased activity of a flagellum or the tail, and also activate the acrosome to release its enzyme. These are the structure that you need to remember. These are the changes that is take place inside the sperm in capacitation. First changes is the uterine fluid will leads to wash away various inhibitory factor. Second one is the cholesterol vesicle. The sperm will swim away from the cholesterol vesicle. And third one is the calcium, right? Sperm become more permeable to the calcium. Now here's one comment is actually asked in a recent exam. The spermatozoa in seminal fluid undergo capacitation. First thing, that is the wrong sentence. Spermatozoa get capacitation inside a female genital tract, that is given in Guyton as well as in Gannon. So in Guyton and Gannon both mention this capacitation of the sperm will take place in the female tract. So the actual comment is asked in July 2015. It is actually wrong comment. Spermatozoa is not capacitated in seminal fluid. It is capacitated inside female genital tract. So obviously, okay, that's it. We are going to discuss the in this slide we are going to discuss about the function of the seminal fluid, rather capacitation. So seminal fluid will secrete fructose. It is critical for the nutrition of a sperm. It is a release prostaglandin. It further aid the fertilization two-way. It is basically the revision of the seminal fluid. So it react with the female cervical mucus and make it receptive for the sperm motility. It causes reverse peristalsis of the uterus and fallopian tube, and it move the ejaculated sperm toward the ovaries. So remember one more time, capacitation is not actually happen in the seminal fluid. It basically happens inside the female genital tract. Clear? Now let's discuss about stages of the male sexual act. So before we start our stages of the male sexual act, let's discuss something about penis. Penis is actually erectile tissue. So it has a 3 erectile bodies, 2 corpora cavernosa and 1 corpus spongiosum. What is 2 corpus cavernosum, 1 corpus spongiosum? So the order of the male sexual act is that first there is the erection, then there is emission, and third one is the ejaculation, right? So let's discuss one by one the erection. Now here's the a very tricky thing. Erection is basically the function of the parasympathetic nerves. Emission and ejaculation is basically the sympathetic function. Lubrication on the other hand is also parasympathetic function. Alright, urethral gland and bulbourethral gland will secrete the mucus. Obviously urethral gland, bulbourethral gland will secrete the mucus. So during sexual stimulation, the parasympathetic impulse will be high and it causes urethral gland and bulbourethral gland to secrete mucus, and this mucus will eventually flow through the urethra during the intercourse and aid the lubrication during the coitus or during the sexual intercourse. But remember that most of the lubrication during the sexual intercourse will be provided by the female sexual organs. the secretion of the vagina, secretion of the cervix. So lubrication that we lubrication that we get in the during the coitus is basically most of the time it is given by the female sexual organ, and the small portion of the lubrication will be done by the male partner is basically urethral glands and bulbourethral glands. Got it? Now how the erection will take place? It is again very tricky. How erection will take place? This is the dissection of a penis. You can see this is the cross section of a flaccid penis. This is the cross section of a erect penis. You see there is inside the cross section there is a vessel known as helical arteries. The red color structure that is shown, the orange color structure that is shown over here, it is basically the helical arteries. So let's get started. It is a neurovascular event. So basically it comprises of two things. One is the nerve stimulation and vascular events. So during the flaccid state, blood flow to the cavernous space is minimal. So these are the small pond. This pond supposed to fill with the blood in order to erect the penis. This pond is known as cavernous space. छोटे छोटे तालाब है. If you want to understand it, these are the small pond. This small pond they provide the blood via the artery known as the helical artery. So most of the time in flaccid state the helical arteries remain constricted, so the blood get not flown inside the cavernous space. So we do not go any blood inside this pond and the penis will be flaccid. So because of the vasoconstriction of the vessel that sent the blood away from the cavernous spaces. So what we want to do, we want to relax this helical artery. So if the helical artery get relaxed, then the blood flow will be diverted inside the cavernous space and the cavernous space will be filled with the blood, right? But how can we dilate the artery? That is the tricky portion. How can we dilate the helical artery? Now follow my leads. This is the flaccid penis with constricted helical artery. So the cavernous space are not filled with the fluid and penis become flaccid, right? So suppose this is the cross section of a one smooth muscle that is situated inside the helical artery. This entire oval kind of structure is a smooth muscle of a helical artery. Got it? This is basically constricted normally without any sexual stimulation. So what changes will take place in sexual stimulation? Whenever there is a sexual stimulus, that sexual stimulus may be anything. It may be tactile, it may be visual, it may be auditory, or it just a psychic stimulus, or just imagine anything. So basically the sexual stimulus anyhow will stimulate, will give the signal to the cavernous nerve. Now what is this cavernous nerve? Cavernous nerve is basically noradrenergic, non-cholinergic nerve that will eventually release NO. What is NO? It is a nitric oxide. Now this nitric oxide will activate the guanylyl cyclase that is present inside the smooth muscle of the helical artery. Now once the cavernous nerve will be stimulated, this cavernous nerve will eventually release the nitric oxide. That nitric oxide will activate the guanylyl cyclase. That guanylyl cyclase will convert GTP into the cyclic GMP. Now this cyclic GMP is actually the second messenger that ultimately causes the relaxation of a smooth muscle of the helical artery. Once the relaxation will take place, it will allow to increase the blood flow into the cavernous space, and once there is more amount, or once the relaxation of the helical artery will take place, more amount of the fluid will be diverted toward the cavernous space, and the flaccid state of a penis will be converted into the active state like this. Now this cyclic GMP will eventually converted into the GMP by enzyme known as phosphodiesterase 5. Got it? So penis is not remain erected for the entire time. After some time there is an enzyme that is present in the smooth muscle of the helical artery, that is phosphodiesterase 5, that enzyme will eventually convert or destroy the cyclic AMP. So there are no more cyclic AMP inside the smooth muscle of the helical artery. So there are no more relaxation of a smooth muscle of the helical artery. So eventually helical artery become contracted and the penis become flaccid again, right? So person who have a erectile dysfunction, the person who do not the person who face the erectile dysfunction, the person who do not make the penis erect, if we give inhibitor of this enzyme, see phosphodiesterase 5 is the enzyme, if you give inhibitor of this enzyme, that enzyme phosphodiesterase 5 inhibitor will inhibit this enzyme. So whatever the cyclic AMP will be generated inside the smooth muscle is not destroyed into cyclic into the GMP, right? So the cyclic GMP will remain for a longer period of the time, right? And the penis become erect or penis remain erect for a longer period of the time. That drug is known as Viagra. Alright, so what is the role of the Viagra in erection? In Viagra, there is a phosphodiesterase 5 enzyme inhibitor. That phosphodiesterase enzyme 5 inhibitor inhibit the phosphodiesterase. So eventually phosphodiesterase do not break the cyclic GMP into the GMP. So the cyclic GMP will remain available for the longer period of the time. So the relaxation of the helical artery will remain for the longer period of the time, and eventually the penis will remain erect for a longer period of the time. Got it? The actual drug that is given in Viagra is known as sildenafil. You are going to learn this in detail in pharmacology. This is all about the erection. Now next thing is the emission and ejaculation. Now as far as the emission and ejaculation is concerned, emission and ejaculation both combinedly known as the male orgasm. Now what is emission? First, what is emission? Emission is nothing but a contraction of a vas deferens, basically the movement of a semen from vas deferens into the internal urethra. See, this is the vas deferens. This tube that is shown over here is the vas deferens. Semen is basically stored in this vas deferens inside the ampulla and inside the epididymis. So once the smooth muscle of the vas deferens get constricted, the semen will be flown or thrown inside this internal urethra. So the movement of a semen from this vas deferens, seminal vesicle, prostate gland into this ejaculatory duct, it is known as emission. So the movement of a semen up to that level is known as emission, and movement of a semen outside the penis, outside this internal urethra, is known as ejaculation. Got it? So what is emission? Emission is the movement of a semen from epididymis, vas deferens and seminal vesicle and prostate to the ejaculatory duct. So emission is basically the movement of semen inside the male genital tract. Now expulsion of the semen into the internal urethra, right? Now ejaculation. Now as far as the ejaculation is concerned, is the ejaculation of the semen outside the urethra, ejaculate the semen from urethra to the exterior. That is known as ejaculation. Now as far as the nerve supply is concerned, emission and ejaculation both are sympathetic stimulatory effect. So whenever the sexual stimulus become intense during the sexual intercourse, the spinal cord begins to emit sympathetic impulse via T12 and L2. Remember this segment, T12 and L2. This segment will release the impulse and it pass through the genital organ through the hypogastric nerve, and it will initiate the emission, after that ejaculation. That is all about the emission and ejaculation. That's it for our today's lecture.